Welcome to a series of short videos of the Geneva Water Hub on the topic of reshaping the approach to water cooperation for peace building. My name is Mara Chignino and I'm reader at the Faculty of Law and the Institute for Environmental Sciences at the University of Geneva and lead legal specialist at the Geneva Water Hub. Today we have the pleasure to have Dr. Anders Jägerskog, who is the program manager of the Cooperation on International Waters in Africa, in the Africa Trust Fund, and focal point at the World Bank for Transboundary Waters. Good morning, Anders, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Good morning, Mara. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you. So given your large experience also in conflict settings, could you please share with us your thoughts on how we can improve development approaches around water in fragile conflict and violent affected settings, how we can foster peace and security through water, and also what are the existing good practices that can allow that water is not anymore treated in silos?
Okay, thank you, Mara, for that question. It's an important question. I think we've all of us have struggled with that one, and is still struggling to some extent with that one, how to address it in the best way. But that said, we have no other option than to move ahead and try to find good approaches to do this. Let me make a few points from the World Bank perspective. I think addressing the fragility in conflict affected areas is key. From the World Bank perspective, we have traditionally come in post-conflict, after the conflict has ended. This situation is rarely happening these days. And we realized, and we realized a while back actually, that most conflicts are protracted, if you like. They seldom end at a certain point, but rather they may decrease to some level in one part of the country or one part of a region, but still simmer in other parts of the region. And with this as a background and realization, the World Bank has realized that it needs to be more active than it has previously been in conflict setting, in fragile settings. So a couple of years ago, we launched what we call the Fragility, Conflict and Violence Strategy from the World Bank, which is really a strategy for how we can engage more proactively as the World Bank, but in particular also with partners in these settings. And that's sort of the sort of overall World Bank background. On the water side, we've also worked extensively to try to understand how we can best do this in a concerted effort. And this relates to local, national, regional, transboundary perspectives, all of those. But if I start at sort of the local and national level, what we see on our analysis shows that the provision of water services is something that is part and parcel, not least in the MENA region where I worked extensively, of the social contract in a country. Unless the state is able to provide this resource or this service related to the resource, there is a risk of this social contract disintegrating. So, of course, there are other parts of the social contract, but this basic service part of the social contract is an important one. So we in our approaches, we think this is key to address the aspects of trying to provide these services relating to water supply, water, and as well as sanitation services as a way to maintain the social contract. At the same time, a country that is in a conflict, or a set of countries that are in conflict or have parts of conflict, in them, or perhaps between them. They need to come together and work at the regional level. This is also a realization that I think we all instinctively know, but trying to find those approaches and the incentives for that is not always easy. And what we find is that unless we address these transboundary aspects in order to build peace and stability, but also then provide a situation where these basic services can be provided, we are at a loss. And the World Bank has over the years engaged, not least in Africa, but also globally on transboundary water management. Actually, we're part of the Indus Water Treaty between India and Pakistan. We're actually one of the signatories of that, and that happened early in the World Bank's development, and we still play a role there. And realizing this, what we are thinking is that when we engage in a transboundary setting, we need to do it with a long-term perspective, and with a great deal of patience. Because we know that advancing transboundary water cooperation between the countries in a region such as the Middle East or whichever set of countries, it will be a process where there is often a one step forward and then sometimes even two steps backward. But we still need to engage, and we need to do it with a long-term perspective, knowing that this will be challenges. And why do we do this? But a part I already alluded to, the sort of the social contract aspects of this, and trying to create a situation where water services are provided to people at the local and national level. But also it's a contributor to peace in a broader perspective and stability. If countries come together, but actually this is true on the national level, but also on the regional level. If they come together on water, that can create a situation where more cooperation can also happen on other sectors that are challenging. And given the sort of interdependent nature of water, when it crosses a boundary, states that share it often realize that, well, we are in this together. There is no other option than to collaborate, even though it may be hard. That's also something that we're building on. We also see this as an opportunity to address risks. Unless from a World Bank perspective, we engage in transboundary settings where there are challenges between the countries, we face the risk to not only World Bank projects, but those, of course, as well, but also national and regional development plans, because they are often either directly or indirectly dependent on the provision of water, which often is transboundary. On the flip side of that, also, there are development opportunities that are linked to the provision of transboundary water, not regional. Not least regional integration agendas, which can benefit greatly from this, but also the achievement of the SDGs, some of which are related to, or indicators that are related to transboundary waters, but also broad economic and development opportunities. We've done some early analysis on collaborative versus non-collaborative approaches and the effects it has on GDP. This is still work in progress, but the early results, preliminary results, tells us that if countries shows a collaborative path over a resource, and if we compare this to a non-collaborative approach, the positive effects on GDP, employment, trade, and so on is actually quite substantial. Not only for those countries that are directly involved, but also for those countries in the vicinity, but that may not share the resource as such. So the sort of knock-on regional effects are important. And my final point is also that we cannot afford ourselves to work in silos. If we don't address the linkages between water, energy, agriculture, social issues, peace and stability issues, we are facing challenges, and there is a need to come together to work on these in a more cohesive way and sort of break the silos that often exist within the water sector, but I believe also in other sectors. So I leave it at that. Thank you, Mara, and hand it back to you.
Many thanks for sharing your experience, Anders, with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.